So another punishment that my mom would do to me, um, and if you have problems with needles, you have problems with, drawing blood, stuff like that, skip ahead of this part. Um, just be aware, okay? Be cautious, okay? I'm gonna be very subtle. So she would take my arm, like this, and you have your veins like running up, and this is hard for me to talk about, and it's hard for me to do. But the thing is, I have Christ in me, and I can conquer over my battles, my PTSD in Jesus' name. But she would take a sewing needle and would like stick it in like right there. So very, very traumatizing, and it's just making me feel fear all the time. I was so scared of getting in trouble, and stuff like that. But let's fast forward a little bit. So, like I said, I was never into like scary movies. I was never into anything. That was like my entire childhood, all the way up to like I was 12, 13 years old, by then, I had some friends that are trying to watch scary movies with me, and like I try to tough it out, and watch it with them. And I don't care if I sound like a wuss, because the thing is I was truly terrified, and I had a lot of legitimate darkness being forced onto me from my mom and my dad too. When he was present, he abandoned me when I was in 4th grade. He traumatized me too. He would beat me, scream in my face, choke me out, stuff like that. And that's all I'm really going to say about him, because he's really not worth my time. My mom was actually more involved with me because she never kicked me out. But that's all I'm going to say about him for this story. So I'm about 13, 14 years old, and, I'm starting to hang out with some of more of my friends and stuff, and do, watch scary stuff with my friends, because that's what kind of teenagers do. And I remember, I was still, it's just, this is not my thing. This is not my thing, And then I got into high school, and with my wife, Rebecca. Me and her were actually dating in high school, but we actually had a break. So it was actually right after our break. I was sophomore year, yeah. So I think I was 16 years old, right? And that was the darkest and most depressing, that was the biggest, depressing thing I've ever felt. That was the hardest moment in my life, where it was just like, wow, I had that light, and I had that goodness, and it was my fault that things had failed. So it sat with me even harder. And so I remember that I was hanging out with a friend one night, and, this was after the breakup. I was already really depressed and stuff like that, and I started smoking. I started, drinking more. And what happened was, he asked me if I wanted to play a Ouija board.